Okay, we had a couple of questions. And by the way, the questions are also in the chat. So, I'm gonna, after I present these questions, I want you guys to go to the chat and see the questions because I think this is important and I want to get your feedback on it. The first question, how do you see these three core practices, non-duality, self-inquiry, and Ho'oponopono forgiveness, interact and support one another? In what ways can you use self-inquiry and Ho'oponopono to transform past hurts or beliefs in your life? Now, I'm going to come out of the, hey, everybody. So do you guys see the questions?
Yes.
They're in the chat. Yeah, all the questions are in the chat. I want to now get feedback on those questions because we've been talking about it. We talked about what the SoulTranSync practice is. We talked about the three pieces of it. So now I want to get some feedback on why SoulTranSync is an amalgamation of these practices and why it could be an effective tool in helping to open you up to becoming freer, to becoming more empowered. Does anybody have any feedback on that? Anybody? Alana?
I'm just gathering my thoughts right now. I'll get back to you in a second.
Okay, get back to me. Does anybody else have any thoughts about why the SoulTranSync practice is an amalgamation of practices to help with transcendence? Anybody? Joss, are you there? She told me she may not be. Anybody else? Yes, Vivian.
Okay, I can only say it from A Course in Miracles point of view. But anyway, at the very beginning of the Course in Miracles, it says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Okay, so I have been working on forgiveness. There's that's the whole thing of the course is forgiveness. So they have this lesson 121 and it says, forgiveness is the key to happiness. I've been working on that lesson for about 6 months. Well, the first night that you did your class, your sister told her story of COVID, and I was really moved. And so I was determined to do Ho'oponopono too. Well, last week, because of Ho'oponopono and the course, I realized that I've been studying the course since the 80s. And so nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists made no sense to me. But
Gotcha.
for the first time, I got it, that nothing unreal exists because everything that we forgive is not real. And so now, when you were talking about zero, I did not understand that, but now I know that when you've forgiven everything, nothing unreal exists. And the Course says that we're the Son of God. And so, the Son of God cannot be threatened.
Yeah, that's very good, Vivian. That's good. Anybody else? Alana, you ready? Just want to get your feedback. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to get your feedback. The question is about the three practices.
Yeah. Let me just speak on Ho'oponopono first.
Yeah.
Very powerful words. I really believe words manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And when you chant or when you repeat affirmations, you're actually bringing that into being.
Yes.
And my experience of Ho'oponopono is that it kind of calms me down, my nervous system down, and I find it easier to forgive. It's like a releasing.
Yeah, it's like letting go.
It is. It helps you to release whatever it is holding you back from forgiving that person.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I did Ho'oponopono, and I literally burst into tears because it was so powerful. And I was doing it to a tape that I had found on YouTube, and it was half an hour. And she burst into tears because I realized I was holding on to this grievance with this person for so long. And, I continued to do this for a while. And it was magical how my relationship with this person began to slowly change.
I hear you.
I realized I was the one that was creating the barrier between us. And once I let go of that barrier, our relationship we were able to heal our relationship. But
Sure.
it's not, I mean, it will never be what it was before because there was a lot of hurt things said, but now we are good friends. And I'm at peace with our relationship. So she's moved to the West Coast now. So, but we're friends. But it was me that was holding on to this grudge, and using Ho'oponopono to release that was.
Well, the Ho'oponopono is a great tool for that. It really is. But self-inquiry is also a tool that's great for that, because self-inquiry asks you to question who's believing whatever grievance you might have had.
That's what I just said. I just said I was the one who was holding on to
Exactly.
I was my ego was holding on to it.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just a wonderful healing process. And going to self-inquiry whenever you have to kind of dig deep into your soul to find the answers, you can sometimes open up a whole nest of, barrage of worms if you're not careful. And you can't just do it half-heartedly. You've got to do it all the way. Otherwise, you get no benefits from it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It does.
Because a lot of us, I can figure it out. It goes back to childhood traumas and adult stuff. And when you get into our age group, we've got so much to deal with, to figure out, to work through,
Yes.
that it does take a little bit of conscious effort.
It does take conscious effort.
Yeah. Really get to that point.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that. Jocelyn, do you have any thoughts about it?
So I missed the question because I was checking in and coming up through the
question is in the chat. Do you have the chat?
I put on the chat, but it didn't have a question in it. It just said, I don't have the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. You got to move up on the chat.
Oh.
I didn't receive your PowerPoint to cut and paste the questions at.
I put the questions in the PowerPoint. I mean, in the chat.
It's gone. It's not there now. It was It was there, but then disappeared.
Okay. Right. But I'll just guess what the question is, because I did hear.
I'm looking at the questions right here. Question number 1. I'm looking at it right now, so I don't know why you guys aren't seeing it.
Well, I did hear a couple of really great answers from 2 of your students, 2 of your best. So I'll just guess what the question is. It seems like we were discussing the components of SoulTranSync.
Yes.
And self-inquiry, which is a tool that allows you to get to non-duality, as you know, is really very profound. And I'm getting back into walking every day. And when I would walk every day, there was a meditation that Edward created called Who Am I? And sometimes this meditation would play. And one of the things that I think is so profound about the self-inquiry is that as the questions are asked over and over, who am I? Who am I? And the answer comes back, conscious awareness, it begins to separate, or I felt that it began to separate this me that was walking and, sometimes huffing and puffing, and sometimes really my legs were sore, but other times I was doing great. But it separated me from that physical person who was going through this experience and elevated me as I began to kind of be in a sort of walking meditation where I would look up at the sky and it would be so beautiful and there'd be no clouds. And somehow I saw myself in that space, kind of observing myself walking. And so what I do think about the who am I part, or the self-inquiry part, is that it allows us to take a step back from whatever thing we're thinking about in the past or the future and whatever it is that we're doing, and to become very present on this source, I guess they say, this greater than we are, that is a part of us, that is really the one that's doing the looking and the observing. So I think that that's really important. The Ho'oponopono is just my favorite, because you say these 4 phrases. I have some of my colleagues doing it who were pointing it out to me last week, and it puts you in a different place and a really different headspace.
Yes.
And then, would you like me to share my experience with selfishness?
Huh?
Would you like me to share my experience with selfishness?
You can do it. You can do it in 30-second spot.
Okay. So here's my selfish thing. So I always believe that it's most important to be selfless and giving, and put others and circumstances, organizations above your own personal well-being. And that's held me in good stead. I've been successful doing that. But this week, I made a different decision. I made a decision to selfishly look internally, decide what it is that I wanted or intended, where my emotions lie, and to do that, as opposed to what I thought was the greatest necessarily good for everyone else. And I didn't know how that was going to be received, but I did it. And to my surprise and delight, it was extraordinarily well received. And, it was as if the choice that I made for myself was the greatest good for the overall organization and people involved and engaged. And
That's
I
good.
think that's something that you can do when you become more aware.
Well, when you start to disidentify
Yeah,
with all your persona, with your, I'm a woman, this is how good women act, this is how they need to be. This is, when you start to see yourself as conscious awareness, you see yourself without boundaries. You're no longer contained as a gender, as a race. You're now just love. You're just so consciously aware. And that's one of the real benefits of this non-dual point of view. But we're going to keep moving, all right? But I want you guys to be aware that this non-duality is a freedom.
yes.
To express yourself, to be whoever you want without the constraints of judgment. And you are the only judge.
Yes, I felt free.
Yeah, you are free. And you're free to accept the consequences too. Whatever they are, you accept them. But let's keep going, guys. Chapter 12, Awareness as an Outcome of Self-Inquiry. This chapter explains how self-inquiry, one of the core practices, leads to a deeper sense of awareness by constantly asking, who am I? Or what am I believing? We strip away layers of ego-based thoughts and stories, allowing pure awareness to emerge. This awareness brings clarity, peace, and a profound connection to the true self. The chapter emphasizes the importance of remaining curious and open as you question your beliefs and assumptions. Okay, I'm going to stop right there real quick, because doesn't that really support what Jocelyn was talking about? That we can be, once we allow ourselves freedom from the constraints of our persona, we can experience anything. We can have any kind of adventure, any kind of experience we want. We just need to be aware of our judgments and the box that we generally keep ourselves in. Every one of us puts ourselves in a box and and then decide that's where we're safe. But in the truth, man, that box that we're calling safe can be limiting and absolutely problematic. Jocelyn believed that a good woman has to be selfless. And that it meant everything to her because she defined herself as a good woman. Well, let me say something to you. Men don't have that same burden. Men don't have that same burden. They can be free to make selfish choices and people accept it. So I just want you to be aware of the matrix that you're in, and that how if you're willing to step outside of your matrix, you might be able to see things differently and have more access. All right, so we'll keep going. Anybody want to share anything from there? Yes, Vivian.
I just wanted to say that the most profound thing I learned about forgiveness is that I'm only forgiving myself.
Yes. Yes, it's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to keep moving.
Lisa, so what am I? Just this moment? Yeah, what am I? Well, that's the question. Okay. Now, if I tell you what you are, then what I'm going to do, what I would do is I'd be creating a thought in your mind, and you would then look at that thought and say, "Oh, I'm that," right? And then it would be limited to what that thought is. So when I say the self, I'm talking about that sense of being. I'm not talking about something that you can define, not a self. I'm talking about selfness, the essence of everything that is, which cannot be defined, right? Define it as emptiness, as infinite being, as pure awareness, as the now, just this moment. So, what am I? Ponder that. That is an inquiry that you ask of yourself, of the sense of I. Because what you want to do, the question is to step out of how you think of yourself, the thoughts about who I am or what I am, to get in direct contact with who you are, with what I am, the direct experience of yourself. Now, it's not hard to do, right? Right now, just put your attention on the sense of being. Just notice that there's emotion, sensation, and thought going on, and there's something aware of that. Notice that there's just this very subtle sense, I am. If I say to you, do you exist? You answer. You say, yes. And I would say, how do you know? What are you referring to? Where are you looking to give me that answer of yes? There's a sense of being. And just take that being and don't put any definitions on it. Don't put any limits on it. Don't put any, assign any attributes to it. No boundaries around it. Just the sense of being, right? And now, okay, this is what is this? What is this? That is, what am I? And notice it's just this beautiful, open-ended question. You're not looking for an answer. You are the answer. So no answer that comes from the mind could possibly be it, because it will always give you some form, some definition, some boundary, some limit. So no answer for the mind can be it. Just, what am I? I am. That is so obvious. What am I? But now you're asking this question right directly to the I am. Not an intercessor, not an intermediary, not a representative, right? Not some kind of a mental model, but that of which all models are, all mental models are models. The model's not the thing. The map is not the territory. You're asking the territory itself. I want to know who I am. and then setting aside all the answers that give you a boundary until there's nothing left. And there's just this sense of being and something aware of the sense of being. And just abide there. That is the home of the self. That is the doorway to the infinite.
Questions for chapter 12. What beliefs or stories have you uncovered through self-inquiry that no longer serve you? Now, remember, we talked about with self-inquiry, and how has your sense of awareness changed since practicing self-awareness? These are deep questions. I want you guys to take a minute and feel these questions. What challenges have you faced while engaging in self-inquiry, and how have you overcome them? Now, remember, the self-inquiry is the awareness that you're conscious awareness. You're not an identity. You're not a persona. You're not a person what you are is you are the what's behind all that, the conscious awareness of it all. And when you start relating to yourself as conscious awareness instead of your problematic persona or your problematic identity, it gives you a sense of freedom. I don't have to bear anything. I don't have to bear any thought of identity. I can be free to just be open and spacious and undefined and undescribed. I can be that. And you start giving that to yourself over and over again. It's easy as, you find yourself caught in a thought that's discouraging or disheartening, and you remember that can't be who I am. That's just what I'm feeling. Because who I am is conscious awareness. At my core, that's who I am. So let's keep going. Does anybody have any feedback on these questions they want to share? Nobody? I'm sorry, does anybody have any feedback on the questions? No? Okay. We're going to keep going then. But are you guys understanding the concept of inquiry and why it's so important in giving us an opportunity to see ourselves differently?
Yes, and I'll share something, Ed.
Yes, please.
The one thing what I get from the questions you asked, also from the principles that you introduce in your program, is the who, the what, and the how. Hold on one second. Let me turn on my camera. I don't know if I'm there.
There you go.
So what I'm picking up is basically the what being my higher self, the who being my human experience, and the how being the practices the practices of non-duality and of
I like that.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
The one thing that I picked up also through my self-inquiry process is the importance of not judging my experience or making my experience wrong,
Very
or
good. Yes.
not embracing my humanity,
Yes.
not embracing the fact that, as a former lunatic, that I'm perfect, whole, and complete just as I am, and that's super important to remember because, like, it's very easy to beat up on oneself, and say that there are things, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, all sorts of things that could have been different to change the experience and everything else like that. But when you step back and you realize what you really are, and that you are the awareness, that you are the consciousness, that you're one with everything that is, and that you're not separate from anything else, then that helps to alleviate to some degree that experience, and it helps to pull you out of certain situations that you might find yourself in, especially when you're
Yes.
deep in the rabbit hole. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it basically, for me, it provides a tool. It's like an awakening tool. It's not a one-shot deal. It's easy to get caught up in the human experience. What this actually provides is a means of being able to awaken from each one, not just
Love that. I
the
love it.
whole.
That's
Each
perfect.
experience that you have that might be less than ideal when you're going through it, but then when you wake up to it, you realize that there's another growth opportunity that came as a result of it.
Oh, that's perfect, John. That's really perfect. Can anybody relate to that, what he did, what he talked about? Charles, did you have some feedback?
Thank you, John. And self-inquiry for me has been enabling me to realize, again, what many of you have shared, that the incredible attachments we've had to identity. And back at the very beginning, you were sharing on what we've accomplished and what our roles are, and defining ourselves from that. And the journey of inquiry is clearing all of that,
All of that. All
and
of it.
clearing it. And is it a fun job at times? No, it's not, because this thing of issues in the tissues, the things that the stories we've held within our bodies and our minds, and how damaging they have been to us. So for me, getting deeper and deeper into that place of that, I'm not identifying by anything past or roles or accomplishments, but there is a passionate opening of feeling that is different than anything I've known.
I love that. I
You know,
love
it's a passionate feeling that isn't about this is now who I am, but it's the ongoing passion to share that observance from non-judgment, and from the, Vivian, you shared that it is self-forgiveness. Ho'oponopono is about self-forgiveness first. It all comes to that. And
Yes.
I just did a blog on self-forgiveness on the third principle of mind your own becoming, and really lasered this, that I had, the freedom that comes from forgiving others and yourself. And I turned it around. The freedom that comes when you finally forgive yourself, then you have authentic forgiveness for others in a manner and way different than anything you've ever seen before.
Yeah.
So
I love
that's
that.
it.
We're forgiving ourselves. I just want to remind people what we're forgiving ourselves of. We're forgiving ourselves for believing constructs that are not always loving in our best interest. We buy into them quick, and then we sit and we suffer in them in our mind. The Ho'oponopono, the forgiveness, is letting go of all those constructs. It's being free to be a being instead of a person. And I think that's powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. Let's keep going with the presentation. Chapter 13, Developing Emotional Self-Awareness. This chapter focuses on the concept of emotional self-awareness and its importance in spiritual growth. Emotional self-awareness is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions effectively. By developing this awareness, you can identify emotional triggers, avoid reactive behaviors, and approach situations with greater emotional intelligence. The chapter explores how emotional self-awareness contributes to emotional healing, relationship harmony, and personal empowerment.
Have you ever considered how your emotional intelligence affects your daily life? Let's break it down. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions as well as those of others. It's like your personal social GPS, guiding you through the complexities of human interaction. At the heart of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. It's about understanding your own emotions, recognizing your strengths, and identifying areas for growth. It's like having a private conversation with yourself where you gain insights into your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Next comes empathy, the ability to understand and share other people's feelings. With empathy, we build bridges of understanding, fostering genuine connections and trust. Finally, we have emotional regulation, the art of managing our emotions in response to life's ups and downs. With emotional regulation, we can navigate challenges with grace and resilience. Understanding and mastering emotional intelligence can transform how we interact with ourselves and with others. So, how can one master emotional intelligence? Well, the journey begins with practicing self-reflection. This involves examining your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with curiosity and introspection. As you engage in regular self-reflection, you gain insight into your emotional patterns and triggers. This leads to greater self-awareness, allowing you to respond to situations with clarity and intentionality. Next, work on developing active listening skills. This means truly engaging with others, both verbally and non-verbally, to understand their perspectives and experiences. When you listen actively, you demonstrate empathy and validation. This fosters trust and rapport, strengthening your interpersonal relationships. A third strategy is cultivating empathy. This requires you to put yourself in the shoes of others and strive to understand their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. As you practice empathy, you show compassion and understanding, which further builds trust and rapport in your relationships. Last but not least, practice emotional regulation. This involves effectively managing your emotions in response to challenging situations or triggers. Techniques such as mindfulness, deep breathing, and other relaxation exercises can help you cultivate emotional regulation. This way, you'll be able to respond to situations with composure and resilience rather than succumbing to impulsive reactions. Incorporating these strategies into your daily life can significantly enhance your emotional intelligence, allowing you to navigate personal and professional relationships with greater ease and success. With these strategies, you can start improving your emotional intelligence today. Mastering emotional intelligence doesn't just benefit us, it also positively impacts those around us. It's the catalyst for enhanced communication, fostering deep connections and mutual understanding in our relationships. In professional settings, it bolsters collaboration, enabling us to navigate team dynamics with sensitivity and respect. On a personal level, it cultivates a sense of rapport, allowing us to engage with others on a deeper, more authentic level. In mastering emotional intelligence, we not only foster personal growth, but also contribute positively to the lives of those around us.
Right. Okay, guys, let me ask you a question. This is interesting. How do you feel emotional self-awareness is important in the evolution that we're in right now, in the moment that we're in now in history? How do you feel becoming more emotionally self-aware is an important tool for now? I mean, it's more important now than ever. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
Sure, I think given today's climate of so much division, definitely emotional regulation, which is what emotional intelligence is about, is really important, especially in the way that we interact with others and how we manage our own emotions, but also in how we interact with others.
Yes.
And as a result of our awareness and our experience and our knowing, the way we show up for others, the resource that we can be for others, and how can we actually exacerbate a situation or diffuse a situation, and basically to some degree ultimately change the experience that we're having. And
Yes.
thinking we're doing this, for others, but in reality, we're really doing it for ourselves and easing the way in which you see the world versus thinking that the world is happening in front of us.
Yes, I love that. I love that, John. That's really good. I also um, can see that in this polarization that we're experiencing right now in consciousness, with there's the them, and these are the good people, and these are the bad people, and these are the aware people, and these are the destructive people. I mean, we're all in this great competition of who's right and who's wrong. This is the time now to us to start expanding how we see ourselves and others. We give each other more grace. We give each other more understanding, more empathy. Because if we're not, all we're doing is building those walls higher and higher. We're disregarding and dismissing people quicker and quicker. And that's not what this new age is all about. This new age is about trying to find synchronicity, trying to find ways in order to make people feel part of something, make people excited about an evolution. And I think that's really important. Does anybody have any thoughts about that, Vivian?
Well, one thing the Course of Miracles says that I am responsible for what I see. I choose the feelings that I'm going to feel, etc. Whatever happens to me happens because I ask for it and I receive as I have asked. So basically, I'm really beginning to understand that I really do have dominion and that I'm not a victim and that whatever happens, I did it. But then again, I can will the good, you know?
Yes.
Mhm.
I
Well,
love it.
so today, earlier I had an experience that I think begins to speak to this in terms of the polarization and the divisiveness and so forth. I had a very pleasant exchange with a couple whose wife was trying to explain to her husband why she thought it was important that they go to Costa Rica. Except they had a friend who said, monkeys steal your purse and it's just a horrible thing. And I told her, oh no, that only happens on the Hallmark movie, because that actually did happen in a Hallmark movie. But and I was explaining to her about how great Costa Rica was and that we've had a place there for years and really enjoyed it and how wonderful the people are. And so we had just such a pleasant conversation. And, we laughed and talked and enjoyed ourselves. Then we got on the plane, and what I noticed was that she and her husband, for the 2.5-hour flight, watched Fox News. And I realized in me the emotions that came up from that these were perfectly, nice people who had a pleasant time. But when I saw that they watched Fox News for 2.5 hours straight with one insulting headline from my perspective to another, it began to change emotionally. It triggered things and emotionally how I felt. And then, while all this was going on, she looked at me and smiled, like, oh, hi, so great. We're on this flight together. Things are good. And at that moment, I thought about something you wrote in this chapter where you talked about a Karen and how, or maybe it's the following chapter, but you talked about a Karen and how that brought up feelings that were dissonant to what you believed you were and who you believed you were, and stepping beyond that. And I do think that in this time, as you say, there's a real opportunity for us to realize that, we probably have more in common than not. And that maybe we need to give people the benefit of the doubt, because when we meet them on a plane that doesn't trigger us, it creates a positive, loving, friendly feeling, and that we should not allow the things that divide us to be so significant. As Vivian says, we have dominion over our feelings and what we express and put into the world, and we can choose to put positive things into the world and into ourselves. So
thank you, Joss. That's perfect.
that
Charles,
was my.
that was perfect, Joss. Charles?
I have always believed, for well, not always, significant period, that there's a difference between emotions and feelings, and that emotions can bring us into what I call emotional quicksand, because our emotions are permeated with judgments and stories and beliefs that are untrue, that not so at all. But through all the practices that you're putting forth here, non-duality, ho'oponopono, and inquiry, that coming to a place where we are willing to be in a feeling place, that
Perfect.
that creates the bridges, that we can be the observer of others, quote, there are none, but we can be the observer, not the reactor. And that out of that, the potentiality of realizing they're all perspectives and points of view. And the ultimate reality is that I can choose what I'm going to energize. And I don't want to energize those emotions that create all that divisiveness and separateness. I want to find in me that feeling, that being, and that we all are here to discover what that can be.
Yes, I understand you. The only thing I would add on to that is that we can't judge our emotions either.
No,
You know, whatever we're feeling, if we're feeling anxiety, if we're feeling
yes,
judgment, if we're feeling separation, we gotta acknowledge that.
yeah,
Because if we don't acknowledge it, guess what happens? It stays suppressed in our bodies
exactly.
as dis-ease.
Yeah.
So we need to allow ourselves, no matter what the emotional moment is calling for, just to not judge it, not to find a way to make it wrong. You know, I'm at a place now where I'm looking at the really small emotional reactions that I get for things, and I'm realizing that I have judgment about. And I'm because and with judgment it triggers some emotions. So what I'm trying to be more aware of right now is that whenever I'm getting that feeling, that ego feeling of being engaged in some story, that there's really nothing there. There's really nothing there. And that I need to be more aware of allowing myself to feel it than deciding what it is or calling it something. Yes, um, Alana.
And going back to what Jocelyn said, there's a lot in this world that keeps us divided. And I think a lot of us have to realize that this is by design as well, and that we have to practice detachment.
Yes.
If we find ourselves attached to Democrats, Republicans, whatever, we associate with that and becomes part of our essence, our soul.
Absolutely.
So it then lowers your vibration to a level where it triggers all kinds of emotions.
Yes.
And then you have to figure out how to get your vibration back up again. Right? So it's important not to entangle yourself.
Well, you know, it's like
In
you
the
were talking about
physical.
last week, the cycles. Remember you talked about the cycles last week?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's like that. We find ourselves getting caught in cycles, and unless we put awareness, we respond the same way as we did before.
Exactly. And I was in Costa Rica, and it took me like 2 or 3 days for me to come down from this American vibration.
Oh, yes, I know.
You know what I'm saying, right? And how serene and calm everything was there. And then you come back and you get hit with this wave of American emotions. The minute I stepped off the plane, I'm thinking, I'm back in America. You can feel vibration of all kinds of stuff going on, but then you got to put a shield of light around yourself so it doesn't affect you.
You do. You have to put a shield of light, and that light is awareness. The shield of awareness. You know, whatever's coming is not real. It's just imagined.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
All right, we've got one more slide, and then we're going to
Wait, Edward, I need to ask one question.
Yes.
Okay, emotion is judgment. So feelings, like when you say feeling, do you mean like intuition?
No, first I didn't say emotions were judgment.
Charles, you just said emotion was judgment. But Charles, when you said feelings, like feelings, do you mean like intuition?
I do mean intuition. I do mean that inner knowing that places us in a whole new place of observance that is not permeated with judgment. It's an intuitive connecting with that inner presence that is the I am of all of us.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to go to the last slide. I don't know if we have time for the video today. Well, this is the question. What emotional triggers have you become aware of recently, and how have you managed them? But we can get into that another time. We're going to do chapter 14. Chapter 14, Emotional Self-Awareness Practice. This chapter provides practical exercises and techniques for cultivating emotional self-awareness. These practices include mindfulness, breath work, journaling, and meditation, all of which help individuals identify and process their emotions in real time. By regularly engaging in these emotional self-awareness practices, you can reduce emotional reactivity, build resilience, and experience greater inner peace. This chapter encourages consistent practice to deepen emotional intelligence and maintain emotional equilibrium. All right, we're not going to have time today for this video, but I want to go back to the discussion we're having. You know, we are bombarded right now, bombarded with emotional triggers. We watch the news, we walk the streets, where our friends and neighbors, we're all talking about controversial things that we think are important, and we're spending most of our time and missing out on the most important thing, which is the love. So I asked this group, how do we get back to the love? How do we get out of our judgmental, problematic minds and remember the truth of ourselves as one, as unity, as whole, and not try to find understanding and reason in our mind in order to keep us separated? How do we return to the heart? Return to our vulnerability? Remember the kindness. So these are the things I want to leave you guys with tonight. And I think that the practices of SoulTranSync have a lot of the tools to help you navigate through that. I think the Ho'oponopono is a personal relationship with yourself where you're becoming aware of your ego self and what it's still holding on to and bearing. Non-duality is always remembering the truth of who we are, the truth of our wholeness. Always remember that there is no one else except for you or self. And then there's the practice of inquiry, which allows you to explore the thinking that your mind is going through. You know, who am I? What am I believing? So we're giving ourselves, we're detaching from our problematic minds and creating awareness and space in order to see things differently. Allowing our hearts to be open to feel things differently too. All right, guys, does anybody else have something they want to share tonight? I didn't get a chance to talk to Cheryl at all. She finally comes back in at the end of the program, but I'm going to get you next week, okay? You can run, but you can't hide. And Susan, I don't know what you did, but here you are. And thank you. Thank you for being part of the group tonight.
Yeah. As always, Edward, thank you. Thank you for what you bring to us. The reminder of the importance of that inner work and light. And, you know, I just realize how vital it is for me to know I'm the light of my world.
There you
I'm
are.
the light of my world. And let me walk in the deepest awareness I can in being that. And not that by role or hey, I'm this, I'm that. I just want to be as kind to Charles and pass it on to everyone as I can, without exception, with no others, with all of us as one.
As one. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John.